Anytime you find a society that is focused on self, me, myself, and I, and when you expand it a bit, it will now be me, myself, I, my friends, and my family. Everybody is trying to achieve success on their own. First of all, it is not bad to try to be successful. It is not bad to try to live a good life. But when you have everybody focused on what they can get, what they can do, they know that it's a dysfunctional society. But they want to work so hard so that dysfunction does not apply to them. I'll give you instances with our politicians. Insecurity is a major problem. And some of us will recall several years ago, the only thing you had to do to protect yourself from criminality is to build a house and erect a high fence. And as the society began to degenerate, instead of solving the problem of insecurity, we now got to the point where you no longer have to have only high fences. You have to have high fences and also broken bottles. You remember those houses, the houses of the big men then. All you had to do is to put broken bottles and metallic objects on your fence. That alone is enough protection. And at some point, insecurity began to degenerate to the point that, look, your high wall is not high enough now. The broken bottles in your fence can no longer protect you. You may need to have dogs, or you may need to have people we call megats, local security people. So instead of collectively coming together, how can we address the issue of insecurity? And I'll give us the platforms that we can use to make all these collective demands. People are now trying to, okay, let me make enough money so that insecurity will not apply to me. So once I can erect my fence, once I can make it 12 coaches of blocks, once I can put bottles there, okay, once I can hire a guard, okay, once I can buy police dog, okay, now, okay, once, and the security was degenerating right before our eyes. But in an individualistic society, instead of saying what are the root causes of insecurity and how can we address them, people are now saying, oh, you know what, since Megad is no longer enough, we may need police protection. And instead of working together so that everybody will have police protection, guess what our elites will do? Let me work so hard, and even people who are not in the elite, to make money so that I can have 3 mopos, 3 mobile policemen guarding my house. Okay, let me make money so that I can now have 6 mopos guarding my house. And so nobody wants to solve the issue of insecurity. They just want to solve it for themselves. That's why they want to have high walls. But when the high walls is no longer protecting them, they put broken bottles. When it's no longer enough, they put electric wire guards. When it's no longer enough, okay, they will now need megad and dogs. If it's not enough, they will now need police. And there was a time in Nigeria, if you had 3 or 4 policemen, you are safe. But today, 6 or 7 policemen is no longer enough to keep people safe. You have to have 6 or 7 mobile policemen plus military resources. And you have to tuck yourself inside a bulletproof vehicle. And we're telling our politicians and we're telling our elites, there are problems you cannot solve at the individual level. You can't. These problems must be solved at a collective level. And so you trying to make enough money, like insecurity is happening now. Now, do you know what our people are doing now? Let me make enough money to buy bulletproof. That's where your politicians are going. That's where almost all the governors in Nigeria today all have bulletproof vehicles. In 1999, no governor had a bulletproof vehicle because you didn't need it. But it's not just governors now that have bulletproof vehicles. The speakers of the State House of Assembly are angling for their bulletproof vehicles. The deputy governor is angling for bulletproof vehicles. The wife of the governor is angling for bullet. This is at the government side alone. Then come to people who are not in government. Come to your business elite. Everybody that makes 1,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million is now trying to go and acquire police protection. But now they are learning that police protection can no longer be enough. That you need bulletproof. And we are telling people, look, what you are doing is to try to solve for yourself a problem that you cannot solve for yourself. Between last year and now, more than 6 politicians have been attacked in their bulletproof vehicles, or 6 members of the society, both politicians, both religious elites. A lot of them, yeah, their policemen get killed, but then because they are in a bulletproof vehicle and they're able to escape, but we're telling them today that if you don't solve insecurity at a societal level, it will get to the point where you may have to start building bulletproof homes. Because if they attack you on the road, they can't get you. They will come to the house. And so make sure that your houses are bulletproof. Make sure that your houses are bomb-proof. Make sure that your houses are fireproof, because they will acquire all these technologies. And also make sure that your bulletproof vehicle now has the capacity to disappear. Because anybody who studied bulletproof, you don't even need to study it. Once you can pin the vehicle in a spot, it is completely compromised. And so we're telling politicians now, yes, your vehicle is bulletproof. Is it fireproof? Is it fireproof? And we're telling politicians, your bulletproof vehicle can be breached. And so these are problems that must be solved at the collective level. You can't solve it at an individual level. The problem with economy, for instance, and people are trying to, if I can open up new branches of my business, if I can open up, 10 more branches, if I can do this, if I can do that. And we're telling you, what you're doing trying to open up branches is good. But an economic policy can wipe away your business. Just one economic policy. But no, people are not interested in regulating or insisting that the government actors do well by that time. They are trying to see how can I myself, yes, everybody can go hungry, but how can I go to bed with 2 eyes closed? For instance, I went to see a friend of mine, the last 2 weeks, in a very highbrow area of Abuja. Very highbrow area. If you see the kind of buildings they are doing there, these are not places where your everyday people come. But as you are driving out the streets, you will see kiosks, you will see tents, you will see where, I don't know what to call them. I think it's not an urban slum, but you will still see makeshift apartments of, I don't want to profile any ethnic group, but you will see people who cannot afford to pay houses or rents there. They now have kiosks in undeveloped areas of that place. They have tents, and some of these people are the people who are doing security men in those estates. Some of them are the people who are maybe cooking for, So as I was driving around and as I was seeing this kiosk, and I say, look at all these multi-million naira mansions, and you have this kind of things around you. The only thing you need is, let's say, small fire be kindled. These people living this close, that is so much wealth in the midst of so much poverty, is already a security issue. They see you drive out every morning, come back every evening, and they are hungry. And you think you can sleep with 2 eyes closed? And people are not trying to solve the problems of the economy. People are trying to say, if I can build a bigger house, if I can have more business, if I can save my money in USD, that's enough. And you tell them, come, let us insist that the government does right. They say, no, let me just focus on getting a pay raise, on getting my masters and all of those things. So we're talking about viral individualism. And in an individualistic society, people tend to want to solve problems for themselves. Yeah, they want to solve the problems. Look, nobody likes insecurity. Nobody wants the electricity to go out of his house. Nobody likes not having food. But how are they solving these problems? They are solving it at an individualistic level. I want to make money so that poverty will not affect me and my family. I want to make money so that insecurity doesn't affect me and my family. I want to make money so that bad roads does not affect me and my family. And how do you respond to bad roads? They buy big vehicles with shock absorber. Although the roads are bad, but this vehicle can navigate bad terrains. And we're telling Nigerians, look, there is only so much you can do individually. There are some problems you must solve at the societal level. And so you see this individualism, which derives from actually selfishness. And when people are talking about insecurity, they're not trying to solve it for everybody. They're trying to solve it for themselves. And so that's why, for instance, if you hear about insecurity in the middle belt, people who are not middle belters are not interested. They're just going about their businesses. For all they care, they just read about the news and hiss and move on. And the only time they care now is if it comes to their village. That is where even some communities in the middle belt today are totally oblivious of what is happening. They just read the news and shake their heads. They're not interested. It's only when it comes to their own village, they will not start crying. And because they don't attack all the villages at the same time, so they attack village A. Only people from village A are crying. And the people from village B and C are just, enjoying themselves, forming laissez-faire until it comes to them. And then once the village A have finished, they will now go back to their laissez-faire and say village C should take care of themselves. But these are issues that we can come collectively to solve. So when you are dealing with an individualistic society, you see this in people's actions. You see this in people's words. And then you see it is also in their prayer points, what they ask when they pray. They're not asking that the problem be solved. They're asking that it is solved for them. They're not asking that the economy be better. They're asking that their personal economies be better. They're not asking for a better healthcare system. They're asking to make enough money so that they can fly to Dubai, UAE, or wherever. And so you see this because I was discussing with one of my associates, and she was telling me that actually a lot of the things you call a dysfunctional society is actually as a result of selfishness. Because there are problems you cannot solve at the individual level. And when you have tried and given it your best and you don't find those success, people tend to give up. People tend to get frustrated because, look, they have prayed, they have fasted, they have sowed seed, they have done everything they told them to do. They have gotten their first class, they even got their masters, but they are still doing boats, they are still driving boats. And even in the boats that they are driving, the cost of fuel and the cost of maintaining the car will not make their businesses profitable. And that's it. And so when they have gotten to their wits' end, it now becomes attractive for them to take their lives. And why are people taking their lives? Majorly. Yeah, we acknowledge the mental health issues and all of those things. But suicide is a high level of selfishness. Is a high level selfishness. High level selfishness. Because the person who is taking his or her life is not considering, the only thing he wants is that he is in pain or she is in pain. But then he or she wants to get out of the pain. But now you trying to get out of the pain will now inflict pain on the people who know you, who work with you, who are your family members, who are your dependents. But the only thing that you are fixated is self, myself. And so they don't know that just the mere fact that you know that another person is suffering from what you are suffering, it reduces the suffering. Just the mere fact that you know that I am not in this alone is reduced. But when you have cornered yourself, when it is you, yourself, and I, Nigeria Limited, as you undoubtedly have in Nigeria, then a way of escapism becomes the route many people will take in an individualistic society. And not just committing suicide. What people don't know is that when the economy becomes tough, or when it becomes tough as it undoubtedly is in Nigeria today, escapism can come in many variants. Escapism can come in the form of suicide. Escapism can come in the form of japa. Because now, this person is not trying to solve the problem for every young person. He wants to run away so that the problem no longer applies to them. And imagine the number of Nigerian youths, the amount of money, the amount of resources we spend on visa application every year. If we spend 1/10 of the energy we spend on visa application yearly, if Nigerian young people spend 1/10 of the energy we spend on visa application yearly, there will be no need to run in the first place. If we can commit just 10% of the effort we spend to get visa, if we can put it into collective action to say, look, this problem must be solved, believe me, it will be solved. But in a hyper-individualistic society, people tend to think, oh, let me go. And then when you look at the immigration policies of many countries, you need to have 20 million naira in your account. I say, oh, this guy has 20 million that he can domicile in an account. You need to have this, you need to have that. And he's not even traveling, he's just traveling as a student. You need to show proof of funds. And what they are doing with the immigration policy is not different from what they did during slave trade. So during slave trade, people like me will not even be bought. I won't be bought because I'm skinny. People may think, oh, this guy does not have muscles, because they are looking for people who are muscular, who can work in their farm lands, who can work in their plantations, who can work in the cotton farms, who can do the menial jobs, who can do the manual labor. So the slave masters will come and inspect cargo. They inspect people, they push people aside, they say, no, this one is not fit, this one is not fit, this one. So they take the fittest in the society and then they export it to their society to achieve their own societal needs. And when you look at the immigration policies of many countries towards Nigeria and a lot of the quote-unquote third world countries, I don't believe that we are third world countries. We are developing countries. I think developing is a good way to look at it. So if you look at the immigration policies of these countries, you see that it is the same slave selection. When they have an aging population, right, and that this aging population needs healthcare issues, they will begin to open their immigration policies up to people who have healthcare skills, maybe medical doctors, nurses, lab scientists, caregivers of all kinds. And today, You will still see countries now that are opening up their visa policies to bricklayers, carpenters. And today, when you go for visa interviews, the only question they're asking you, proof of fund, because anybody that can make 20 million naira in Nigeria, in their view, can contribute meaningfully to their economy. So because they are looking for people, they're not looking to help you, they are looking for you to help them. And so their view is that if you want to come to Canada, you must prove to me that you are able to make 20 million naira in Nigeria, because if you have the intellect, and if you have the skills, and if you have the contacts, and you have everything it takes to make 20 million naira in Nigeria, then you can add value to a country. There are some countries that don't have to show any proof of fund before they enter Canada. But countries like Nigeria, where you know that what they are taking is modern day slave trade, you will need to show that you can work hard in the plantation. That's the visa requirement. You need to show capacity. So then in the olden days, when these people were taking slave trade, you need to have muscles, you need to have biceps, you need to have, you need to be gallant, able, so that when they buy you in their farms, you can make meaningful progress or contribution. And today, you have to show that you're a millionaire. You have to show that you're a billionaire. You have to show this. You have to show this. You have to show this. In fact, in the countries talking about even people who are trying to admit us to do master's degree, PhD, you can see all manner of questions you have to answer. And when you eventually get there and you see people who immigrated from other countries, they didn't have to answer all of those other questions. People are not trying to solve the problem for everybody. They are trying to solve it for myself. And there is only little you can do for yourself. No matter how big you are in Nigeria, if insecurity is not solved, you cannot innovate your way out of insecurity. No matter how rich you become, if you cannot solve the economic issue, you cannot innovate your way out of economic crisis. You cannot innovate your way out of a disintegrated nation. You cannot innovate. There are things, we gave examples last week, that the best a trillionaire can do is to tar the road that leads to his house. But no matter how much money you have in Nigeria today, you cannot guarantee that all the roads you will use are tarred. You cannot guarantee that. The best you can do is to tar the road to your house or to your village. But once you have tarred the road from your village to the junction, from that junction to the next city, will you tar it? You cannot tar all the roads you are going to use. So instead of coming together, and I'm not discouraging people from tarring the roads, because if this person tars in front of his house, the other person, fixes the front of his house, maybe we'll have more fixed roads, and we're good with that. But we're saying that trying to solve this issue of road for yourself or for your business premises. So there are hotels, we know that the owners try to solve it for themselves. Well, we thank you for your efforts, but we're saying that thing you've done is only 50% of the equation. If we don't collectively insist that our government responds to governance needs, then every other thing we're doing will always fall short of the mark. And there is this issue of reward, because you see, when people I met Viral Individualism, in fact, I almost started, because I'm not an emotive person, but there are times when things will happen, I can no longer take it. Anytime you're trying to do something, people tend to think that it's for your own personal profits. Personal profit. And so we are trying to mobilize people to come out and protest the killings in the Middle Belt. And people are legitimately telling us, you have to provide us food, you have to give us water, and you have to give us money for coming. So we are going to hire people to come and demand for better. You see the insecurity, everything happening in Nigeria today, but we have to pay you to come out and demand for better. Well, because people want to reward themselves. It is not our responsibility to reward ourselves. And that is why everybody is looking for reward. People are so hardworking in Nigeria, make no mistake about it. People are so innovative in Nigeria, but they put all their energies in something that will reward them. If that reward is not them, they will not put any effort. If you see the amount of energy people put in their private lives, if you see even the Okada riders, if you see the energy they used to run around from morning till evening to ride Okada or to ride Keke, or even these Mulwe drivers in the Lagos road, if you see the energy, is it touts? If you see how touts work hard, They run from one end of the road to the other to harass people just to make money. If you ask them, just commit a little fraction of that energy into collective good. No, they can't do it. But I'm telling you that so far you are a tout in a dysfunctional society, whether you run from Third Mainland Bridge to Isolo and back every day, that your life can only experience a limited version of improvement. If that person becomes that same tout and runs that same race he runs every day in a society like United States, he will have more results. If you carry this same thing, this same touting that you are doing now, and you take it to the UK, assuming that it can fit into the economy, and you don't have to do anything extraordinary, just take the same touting to a place where the systems are functioning, you become a better tout. This driver, these boats that people are doing in Nigeria, and they are crying every day, just go to UAE and do both, become a taxi driver in UAE, and you are not going to do anything better. You are going to work the same number of hours. But it is inherently better because the societies, and so when you have societies like ours, where people want to reward themselves, anything that the reward will not be to themselves and that the reward will be delayed, it is not for Nigerians. It is not for people who operate this individualistic mindset. And finally, I want to talk about victimhood mentality. Victimhood mentality. And victimhood mentality saps energy. It drains energy because people see themselves as victims of Nigeria. And so when you ask the Okada man, he's the victim. When you ask the Southeasterner, he's the victim. When you ask the Southwesterner, he's the victim. When you ask the everyday Nigerian, we are all, in some sense, victims of Nigeria. But that's not entirely true. Yes, there are in some sense where things happening in the economy affects you. The 1 million naira you had last year was about, I think, $2,500 or so. Today, your 1 million naira is not up to $1,000. That's it. So you can say you're making you're a millionaire in Nigeria, but you don't have up to $1,500, $1,000. You don't have it. If you change it into pounds, you have even less. And so people can now begin to, okay, let me begin to save my money in USD. Well, how is that working for you? But we tell Nigerians, you are not victims of Nigeria, because victimhood mentality, what it does is that it satisfies an emotional need, but it does not solve the problem. And so, for instance, a normal young person in Nigeria will say, yeah, look at what their leaders are doing. Our leaders are not good. Our leaders, they don't think about us. They are very greedy. They are very selfish. And then if you want to get following in Nigeria, just start cussing out the leaders. Just start saying that the leaders are selfish, the leaders are bad. Once you start doing it, everybody will follow you because you are telling them what they want to hear. But what you're actually doing is reinforcing the victimhood mentality. What that victimhood mentality does is that, yes, it gives you emotional satisfaction that alcohol gives an alcoholic, but it does not solve the problem. Because now that you see yourself as a victim, it has taken away agency from you. Agency means that I am not the victim here. Yes, I don't like my situation, but I can change it any day we want. But anytime people start seeing themselves as victims, they no longer have the power to change their outcomes. And so they are the good people, the innocent people of Nigeria. We, the ordinary masses, are very good people. But you know what? Tinubu is bad. Atiku is bad. The leaders are selfish. Governors they are all criminals. They are very terrible people. And we, the ordinary masses, are so innocent. In that kind of mentality, what you have said is that I have perpetually signed an agreement with underperformance. Because now you don't like your situation, but you have completely taken away the power to change that situation and give it into the hands of quote unquote your enemy. How do I explain this now? You are the Nigerian masses, yes. You don't like the situation of the Nigerian masses, yes. But the solution to the problem of Nigerian masses is no longer in your hands. It is now in the hands of the person who made you a Nigerian masses, which means that you have signed a perpetual agreement to become Nigerian masses, that you can no longer do anything about it. That you are ill. And instead of reaching out to take the drugs for your illness, You now say, oh, it is my enemy that has the drugs, which means that you have accepted to die in your illness because your enemy will not, in his right senses, give you the drugs. But since the drug is within reach, and you say that, no, I don't want to extend myself to reach it, that this thing must be given to me by my enemy, that's where Nigerian masses are. They are innocent victims of Nigeria according to them, and according to the media, and according to their celebrities. But they don't see that they are a bunch of irresponsible citizens. And we keep saying this, that constitutional democracy operates in demand and supply. If you are operating a monarchy, you are better off. I tell people, Nigerians are better off for a monarchy. Nigerians are better off for a dictatorship. Because in a monarchy, see the thing now, you don't have to contribute to your own well-being in terms of governance because you can't demand for better. Like in UAE now, you can't, there are things you can't say in UAE. There are things you can't say there. There are some meetings you can't hold there. It's not like, you can't, it's not, the people don't think it, let alone saying it with their mouths. It's a monarchy. But the attitude of Nigerians, we are better off practicing monarchy because sometimes you get good monarchs. Sometimes you get egoistic monarchs who will want to develop their people for their own ego. But in Nigeria, you have that they say that we have democracy, but democracy has a formula. Democracy has a demand and supply formula. That if you don't demand for good governance will not be supplied. If you don't demand for credible leadership will not be supplied. If you don't demand for good roads will not be supplied. And so that every time you see democracy, whether you see it in America, in Britain, in Canada, anywhere that you see democracy working, the demand is always far ahead of the supply. The demand is always far ahead. So you can demand for 15 things. And the politicians, oh, by the way, when we say demands and supply, let's make it clear. So there are two aspects of governance, democratic governance. The demand side of democratic governance is made up of us, the citizens, the media, the civil society, the opposition political platforms, maybe the religious and the organized society. Those are the demand side of governance. Those are the people whose responsibility it is to say, we want more, we want more, we want more. Then the supply side of governance are into three in a democracy. You have your executive, your president and your governors and your local government chairmen and the appointees, whether they are commissioners, ministers, those are at the supply side of executive governance. So Buhari and all his ministers, all his SAs and everything, the 36 governors and all their commissioners, SAs and everything, the local government, the councillors, every other thing you see there, those are the supply side guys when it comes to executive governance. When you come to legislative governance, you have your legislators, whether at the federal or the state level. So it is their responsibility to supply legislation. So if we have outdated laws, it is them that will amend our laws. If our laws are not good enough, it is them that will amend it. So you and I, yes, we can try to discuss, we can try to come up with ideas, but those ideas must be discussed in Nigeria's parliament before it can become a law. Now, so if you discuss it in the beer parlor, but you can't find a way to cascade that idea from the beer parlor to the parliament, it will end up as a beer parlor conversation. And so you have a lot of Nigerians who are very knowledgeable about all the good things we can do, but they are discussing it in the wrong place. They can discuss governance with their friends, they can discuss it in the market, but they can't find a way to carry that their conversation and pay the necessary price required. Because it is not just when you have an idea, the idea becomes a law. No, you have to funnel it through before it gets to the National Assembly. And you have to still funnel it, lobby before it becomes a law. And that's why in functional democracies, you have lobby groups. Laws are not just made in America. People lobby so hard for laws to be made and to be changed. For instance, the Christian community in Nigeria is lampooning the United States Department of States for not designating Nigeria as a country of concern. The kind of lobby that goes in before a country is put on that list or removed from that list. The kind of consultants you need to hire to keep lobbying lawmakers. So there is the demand side of legislative governance. How many Nigerians are actively demanding for the kind of laws they wish to see? Actively, not just discussing it in their parlor, not just tweeting about it, but they are actively doing everything they can to get it done. And when it comes to judicial governance, it is your judiciary that will supply judicial governance. And people don't really realize that, okay, the best way I can describe it to you is look at what people go through before they can become a Supreme Court justice in America. Look at what people go through before they become Supreme Court justices in America. The citizens will bring up the sins of your great-grandfathers. Everything you have done, both when you were in the womb, it will be brought to the surface. Look at how we appoint our Supreme Court judges. Even the girl they molested last night, we cannot discuss it. So from the point of even selection and the process the society will walk you through. So anybody that, for instance, Tinubu appoints as a, or this NJC recommends as a Supreme Court justice becomes, there's no petition against the person. Even when you have one or two petitions, it is lacking in evidence. And when you have supplied your evidence, you don't just write a petition, give your evidence. You lobby. Do you have to protest? Do you have to keep going to the media to call this person a rapist? Whether if the person raped someone, don't just write a petition to NJC. This person raped my cousin when he was in the High Court of Appeal. No. That's not. You have to keep shouting it until it becomes clear that a rapist cannot be on the Supreme Court. But then people don't also know what goes in before judicial decisions are made in these countries. Because sometimes the court is afraid of the society. Because there is a kind of judicial decision they will take. They are afraid of what the people will say or do. But in Nigeria, the supply side guys are lethargic because they know that even if we want, let us sell petrol at 900 naira, they would say nothing. The best they can do is they can grumble in their houses. So when fuel sells at 900, people are not trying to collectively address the issue of rising petrol price. They want to now make more money so that they can fill up their tanks. So when you have insecurity on the roads, people who should ordinarily travel to they are now trying to make more money so that they can fly. And we are telling Nigerians, look, very soon, say that I told you. It's not even a prophecy. It's going to happen. Your airports will soon become unsafe. Your airports will soon become unsafe. It will soon become unsafe. Because instead of addressing the insecurity, people are trying to say, oh, once I can, okay, make sure that you have an airport to every village. And then the way airports in Nigeria is designed, airports are designed outside of the city. The airports are even the one in Abuja, they are designed almost on the outskirts of the city. And when you have landed in the airport, be sure that you can still fly from that airport to wherever you are going to have meeting, or you fly from that airport to your house, and then when you want to go to the airport, you take off from your house and fly to the airport, because people think that they can innovate their way out of dysfunctional societies. So I've said that where you don't find active demand, and demanding is not just nagging on social media, calling people out. Yeah, you may be part of it. It is not just protest. Protesting may be part of the equation. Lobbying may be part of the equation. Sponsoring candidates may be part of the equation, because look, there are people that no matter how much you protest and lobby, they cannot change their views on any particular issue. So if you want to deal with them, you go and empower their opponents. So that's why what Americans do, when they find out that you're a lawmaker and that you're no longer dancing to their tune, they will leave you alone. But the next person that is running against you in that office, all of a sudden the person will begin to receive donation. And they are donating to the person so that the person will unseat you that they don't like. In Nigeria today, you will be a good person, Kodia, and you go to your village and you tell them that you want to run for office. They don't like the man that is there, but they won't support you. They don't like, they know that this person is a thief, but they will just sit down and they're watching you. And when the thief defeats you, because he will still share their money, he will exploit their greed. And so the politicians have learned to exploit our greed to their own advantage. So they will bring rice, They will bring onions. They will bring 5,000, whatever it is that you need. They will bring it. And they're not bringing it because they love you. They are bringing it because they know that you're a greedy person. And so they want to exploit your greed to their own advantage. When you have in a society where the demand side is not working. So the problem in Nigeria is twofold. You don't have the supply side working. Because you and I cannot take judicial decisions. It's the judges that will take it. You and I cannot take legislative decisions. It is the lawmakers. You and I cannot take executive decisions. It is the executive. But these people are relaxed and lax because the people who should be demanding are not demanding. And so the supply side guys, yes, are the problem. But they are the problem because there is also a problem with this demand side. And so why is there a problem with the demand side? It is not because people are not working hard. It is that they are working hard at an hyper individualistic level. That all our hard work is not to get better laws, but to have a better outcome. And so when you see people working hard, they are not working hard to fix Nigerian public school. They are working hard to send their kids to private education. When you see people working hard, they are not working hard so that it will be better for us. So this me is what, and they were saying that, look, yes, you can make money. Yes, you can do this, but there is a limit. You see the people who walk around, they cannot even go from point A to point B without having 6 policemen and a bulletproof vehicle. These people, when you see them in America, they will be the ones pushing their own trolleys. When they go as little as close as UK here, UK, 6 hours, they will be the ones, walking the streets like free people. But today, they can't do it. Even in churches, even inside the churches, you will still see policemen. Do you know now, policemen with long arms now enter churches? Before, I'm telling you, I saw it. It was startling. Before, policemen with long arms, by long arms I mean AK-47 and all those, they stay outside the church, maybe close to your gas car. And then one with a service pistol will be inside the church. Do you know that policemen with long arms now escort their guys inside the church? That's how unsafe people feel. But when they go to America, they will be crossing road alone, no bulletproof, no nothing. But here, and we've told them, these are the same people, they saved up money to build high walls. They saved up money to put broken bottles on it. They saved up money to put electric fences. They saved up money to have Megad. They saved up money to have police protection. Today, they are saving up money to buy bulletproof. And we're asking them, when your bulletproof is no longer enough, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Viral individualism. No society which has this kind of individualism can grow. No society which this kind of individualism can grow. Because despite our best efforts, we will be running in very many directions. And that is where we will draw a close on today's class. I will now take questions, comments, and contributions. Oh, thank you. I think there are 4 charts here. Individualism is a bane to our national development. That's from Haruna Godia. That's very correct. Actually, we are calling it individualism because we wanted to be politically correct. It's actually selfishness. That's the proper name for what is happening with Nigeria. Selfishness. People are so selfish to the core. Nobody's trying to solve problems for other people. And that's why someone wrote on Twitter, not Twitter, because I saw a video of this Amala mixer. Some of you know Amala. So there is this machine that they now made. So instead of you doing your semo, the machine will now be turning the semo and they will make the semo. And the person wrote, look, Chinese people don't even eat semo, but they have made machines that will help us to make our semo. Yet, our professors of engineering are running to the United States to go and clean bedrooms. I think she is either used to go and wash plates in their restaurants. Because even at the business level, many people don't think, how can I make it better for everybody else? By designing solutions. That sometimes you see that our businesses are thinking of, how can I make more money? Not how can I help? And when you have that, how can I make more money? How can I solve my own problem and not the societal problem? You tend to, so you see that even the way our businesses are designed, you have very few businesses who are solving a collective problem. And so, yeah, I sincerely agree that Nigeria is better off under monarchy. I totally struggle to understand what democracy has contributed all these years. Your democracy cannot work. And I tell you this, even when Americans started this democracy thing, did you know that as at the time the blacks started voting in America, the black to white ratio is 1:9. So for every one black man, there is a corresponding 9 white men. So if all the votes of the people in the black race totals 90, the white people will get 900 votes. But when they even started giving blacks the opportunity to vote, they did not do universal suffrage. They did 4 is equal to 1. So 4 people need to vote before those 4 Negro votes. Let me use their language. 4 Negro votes before 4 Negro votes were equal to 1 white vote. And I'm not advocating for something like that in Nigeria. But when you look at it, you will find the merit that you that went to school, you understand what is at stake. You know what you are doing. That your vote is equal to one person somewhere who has not gone to any school, who does not understand what budget is, who does not understand what the issues is, who does not have anything to eat that day, who does not know where his next bottle of codeine or where his next, gay or whatever his favorite drug is. They don't have anything. And this person, their vote is easy to compromise. So for this person, you tell him that he has a franchise, but he's not going to school, doesn't have money to feed himself, doesn't understand what they are saying in the television, doesn't understand the issues that a normal person who functions in a democracy should have baseline knowledge before you're able to make democratic decisions. And without that baseline knowledge, that's your franchise is not a franchise. How can you give a franchise to someone? You told him because you are 18 years, but the person cannot reason or think. And therefore the person goes to a church or a mosque, and then they tell him, don't vote that person, is an infidel. And the only thing he needs is a religious thing. But there's a certain level of enlightenment this person will get to. You may have to tell him more things. Yeah, I know he doesn't worship in our mosque or in our church, but I think his economic policies are better than that of the person who is worshiping our own. But at that capacity, without that capacity to reason, that franchise, so you with your master's degree, you will finish voting, and pardon my language, one person somewhere can just come out and cancel your vote with just 500 naira. They don't even need to give them much, just 500 naira, and they can cancel your vote. So the thing with universal suffrage, say everybody that has become 18 come out and vote, and all the votes are equal. Wow. The people who taught us democracy did not start with equal votes. They started by disaggregating the votes and assigning unequal weights to the votes. And so if you have gone to school, and then at some point they started saying you must be a landlord before you vote. Check these things. You must be a landowner, that you must be an owner of capital before you vote. So if you are not a landowner, if you are not contributing meaningfully to the society, they feel that you will not know how to vote. Well, all of those things we are to make sure that the slaves did not vote in a certain way. But when you have in Nigeria, Professor come and vote, Ahmadjiri come and vote, the same kind of vote, well, you see where the problem is. And so, because you have a place where we still think of our kings as having descended from gods, so if Tinubu has an authority that cannot be questioned, that's Nigerian culture. His authority cannot be questioned. Because the police system is not to protect you. The police system is meant to protect his regime. The DSS is not meant to protect you, it's to protect his regime. This evening, I just received a call from the police that the protest you are applying in Abuja tomorrow must have to be postponed. Despite all our arrangements with the police, that they are going to give us protection. And that we have told them, we interviewed us from one office to the other, sorted everything out. By the law, by the books. Only to tell us this evening, that your protest tomorrow can no longer hold. I said, what is the reason? The president is going somewhere close to that place you wanted to do your protest. And so the whole street will be cordoned off tomorrow. I say, and I'm now beginning to think, are you sure the president is going somewhere tomorrow? But then, since they have said that the president is actually going there tomorrow and the whole street will be blocked, am I going to bring out people on the streets to start confronting with soldiers? Well, the police has invited us again tomorrow to come and have further meetings with them. But then where the whole police and security system is meant to protect the regime of the president, where the people and their attitude is meant to sieve these people. So the best way you can have a democracy work in Nigeria is when you have people who are benevolent. But because the kind of leaders democracy keeps producing are not usually benevolent, there are people who are afraid. People who should be afraid of the people. They know that if they don't do well, that they will be voted out. They know that if they don't do well, that people will come out and protest. And so in order not to lose face or lose election, they're going to work hard, not because they are good people, but because the people who send them to work will demand an account. In Nigeria, where citizens fail to hold our leaders to account, it is better for us to practice monarchy. One of the reasons why people don't demand for better governance is also because of selfishness. Because people tell you, oh, if I demand for better, government will kill me. And that's the most, well, it is actually mind manipulation that make people fear their government. It's actually mind manipulation that make people fear their government. One of the cheapest anti-malarials you have now in Nigeria is sold at 3,250 naira, anti-malarial drugs. And people are dying in Nigeria daily because they can no longer afford anti-malarials. Anti-malarials, people can no longer afford it. And they are dying daily. These are the normal sicknesses. By the way, everybody in Nigeria is also suffering from malaria or typhoid because we are our own medical doctors. We don't even go to lab. Just once you start feeling the signs or the symptoms, you just go to chemist or patent med or whatever and tell them to mix drugs for you or to give you any of your favorite anti-malarials, and then you're good to go. But today, a lot of people are experiencing the same symptoms that they used to experience, but now they don't have money for anti-malarials. And they watch them. People don't know how deadly malaria is until you don't have anti-malarials. Malaria kills you on a weekly basis. The number of people that just malaria alone kills on a weekly basis. Okay, today is the 16th of the month. The number of people that have died as a result of malaria because they can't afford anti-malarial medication between January 1st and now is much more than the number of people that have been arrested, killed, detained, disappeared, tortured by oppressive governments since 1960. So you know the government in 1960, all of them, the people that the first government, Babangida, Buhari, Tinubu, Abacha, everybody that they assassinated, allegedly killed, kidnapped because they demanded for better. Carry all of them put together. And even the people that were killed during EndSARS, carry all of them put together. It is not up to the number of Nigerians who are dying needlessly. If we have government working, malaria should not be a leading cause of death in Nigeria. And so it is better for this person to die in the hands of malaria than to come out and protest or to demand for good governance. So this person will prefer to die quietly on their bed. And so the person who died on his bed and the person who was demanding for good governance and they were arrested or killed, is it not the same death? Or is one better than the other? Another example. God forbid that people have accidents. Very few hospitals have active emergency services. First, there are no ambulances on the road. There are no ambulances. So people have to drag you like what? Carton. And drag you into a keke or into, not anybody here by the mercies of God. Before you even get to the hospital, and they're now talking about, who knows him, who would deposit 1 million, who would deposit 100,000. Before they keep doing all of the things. People who die needlessly on the account of, I know of someone, I've forgotten his name, in Edo State. Sorry, it's on my Facebook. That was in 2017. Because they couldn't find oxygen. There were no oxygen in 4 hospitals when he was having a crisis. In 4 hospitals. By the time they got to the 5th one, the man is dead. And even the 5th one still didn't have oxygen. Then he was pronounced dead in the 5th hospital. So people die more in the hands of bad governance than they do in the hands of repressive governments. This last 1 year alone, the number of youths that have died trying to cross the desert, Nigerian youths, Number of Nigerian youths who died. Okay, I think there was a story that broke out the other day. I think it trended, where people will now travel to places like Togo or some of these African countries before they can now take a flight from those African countries to Europe or to wherever, because it's cheaper and better for them. I don't know who found that link. But people, the number of Nigerians that have died in Libyan prisons are much more than the people that NSAS killed. Much more. And so the fear of the government is an irrational fear. It is actually as a result of propaganda. The propaganda is, we will kill 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and use them to make example, and the rest will run away. And yes, we know that they will still die, but let them go to their houses and die. And so when people tell me, oh Chima, you have to be careful, don't, all these things you are doing, you have to be careful. And I said to them, the person who was on his own, going about his normal business, and trailer left Lagos Bridge, the mega city, quote unquote, came and fell on him. He was careful. The people who were killed in Christmas Eve in Plateau State, they did not demand for good governance. They did not, I'm telling you. It was not because they were saying, we no go agree, that they were killed. The people who were kidnapped in Abuja here, that's Issa Pantami or whatever his name is trying to raise money for. They were not protesting. They were not demanding for good governance. The people who die daily because they can't find oxygen in night, the number of pregnant women, especially in the villages, who die while giving birth, normal delivery that should be easy, but because they don't have, 1, trained professionals, 2, healthcare delivery things, or your medical supplies and all of those things, and the recklessness and the no regulation in the industry. There's no regulation. Doctors can kill you in Nigeria and there's no repercussion whatsoever. In places, their licenses will be reviewed. In some places, you will be sued that in one lawsuit, the doctor, if you don't take your time, every money you've made in your life till this point, they will take it from you in one lawsuit. And so if you're going to have operation or going to have a medical procedure, and you are making sure that all your boxes are ticked. In Nigeria, your doctors can afford to be reckless because there's no consequence whatsoever, because there's nobody to enforce the consequences. And so the number of people who die because of healthcare, is it the number of kids who go to school? Every day people are writing jam, and I'm wondering, do they even know that whatever they're going to teach them for 4 or 5 years in university is not relevant? You are going to 4 years with ASU and everything, but you're not coming out with any skill whatsoever. And you are running to school. Do they even know that the education they are offered is outdated? It's not even 19th century. It looks like 18th century knowledge that you're giving people who will be competing with others in a 21st century. That's why people go out there, and after wasting 4 years, they come out and they will now start looking for skills. That's why a lot of young people, after spending 4 or 5 years in university, they will now come and learn graphics design. They will now come and learn coding, whatever it is that they are doing, cryptocurrency. Is there any university in Nigeria that is teaching a class on cryptocurrency? And that's where the world is going. But no, they are teaching them banking and finance. Which banking and finance? So we're talking about selfishness. That if you don't apply the selflessness that Christ is talking about and exemplified, that you always find yourself, because you want your life, fear. You want alone. I want to live long life. Finally, there's something that is called long life and prosperity that Nigerians talk about. Something that is called long life and prosperity. And it marvels me. This thing will marvel you. I can read it from your scripture. If you read 1 Kings 14, because a lot of the things you guys call long life and prosperity is actually not long life. By the way, life cannot end once it starts. Every Christian knows and believes this. Life cannot end once it starts. Once a life is created, it can no longer end again. So what we do in death is translation. So either it translated to eternal glory or translated to eternal damnation. But that life cannot die. And what can die is the body, which means that they have withdrawn your access from participating in this side of eternity. But the other side of eternity is forever. It can't die. 100 years is not a fraction. Do people still know that This sun we are looking at is the same sun that David wrote about. It's the same sun that Abraham saw. It is the same moon and stars that people saw when they came to greet Jesus. It is the same sun. Those people are still in their eternity. They have not started though. So from the time of Adam, they are still waiting. Is Adam dead? No. Yeah, he is no longer here. But that human spirit cannot die. And so what people call this fear of death is an irrational fear. And so if you ask Nigerians, they will tell you that Jesus Christ died untimely. And then you ask them, what do you mean by untimely death? Who actually sets the time? Because that's one of the fears people have why they don't demand for better. They say they want to live long. What do you mean by long life? So Jesus died at 33, or was rather killed at 33. And in the eyes of many Nigerians, I don't want to be like Jesus. The Methuselah that lived 900 and something years, and Jesus that lived 933 years, who was more impactful? Who was more impactful? Who was more impactful? And the thing that people don't realize is this, that death will still happen. I was telling a friend, because this was many years ago, I think he had issues with school and all of those things. I think now he was contemplating on going back to school, but he felt he was advanced in age, that he would not go back to school. So he was telling me, Chima, do you know how old I am? If I go back to school and I would just do, and his mates had graduated, he hadn't graduated, and he was telling me, Chima, I need to go back and do this 3 years. And I said, whether you go back to university or not, the 3 years will still pass. But the problem is that when the 3 years has passed, either you have your degree or you don't have it. Whether people realize it or not, death will still come. Whether you died in your house, or you died by accident, or you died by Boko Haram, or you died at 100, you will still die. Death we know is not actually death, that death is translation. 1 Kings 14. I want to show you that God can call a person home because he is pleased with the person. And this might answer some of your questions here, because people always ask, why do good people die? Why do good people die? Go to 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 14. So I'm reading verse 12 and 13. Arise therefore, go to your own house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die. And all Israel shall mourn for him and bury him, for he is the only one of Jeroboam who shall come to the grave, because in him there is found something good toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam. I'll read this again quietly for you. Arise, therefore, go to your own house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die, and all Israel shall mourn for him and bury him, for he is the only one of Jeroboam who shall come to the grave, because in him there is found something good toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam. And so the story here is talking about son of Jeroboam. Some of you guys will remember Jeroboam. So Jeroboam is the first king of Israel. Now, he divided Israel. So let's trace the kingship. From King Saul, you had your King David. And from King David, you had your King Solomon, we all know Solomon. And when Solomon died, Rehoboam, his son, was supposed to be the king. And when the people came to him and said, your father did this to us, your father was so much aggressive, we want you to a bit relax these tax policies, relax all of these policies, we didn't particularly enjoy your father's government. And the boy went and got bad advice and said, whatever my father did to you guys, I'll do it times 10. And that was when they said, to your tent, O Israel, and the kingdom divided. So there were 12 kingdoms, or 12 contributory kingdoms, and 10 divided and formed Israel, and the other 2 formed Benjamin. So there are now 2 kingdoms. So the best example I can give you is during the Nigeria Biafra War. There was one country and there were many presidents. And then After Solomon died, the kingdom divided into two, and 10 portions went to Jeroboam, and 2 portions was left to Rehoboam. Why did God leave 2 portions with Rehoboam? Because he promised David that there will always be someone on the throne. But before this kingdom divided, Solomon was even still alive when the kingdom was divided. So while Solomon was alive, Solomon had started behaving recklessly, setting up all. God was so angry with him, and God told the prophet, go and anoint Jeroboam the king. And the prophet went and saw Jeroboam. Jeroboam was, by the way, a military commander, was not even in the line of succession, was not anywhere near. And the prophet came to him and carried his cloth and tore it into 12 pieces, and said, Jeroboam, take 10 of these clothes. So the prophet came to him and tore his clothes into 12 pieces and said, take 10. And the man looked at the prophet and said, okay, I take 10. And he says, as you have taken 10, the God has given you 10 kingdoms. That was how the guy became a king. And from that day that anointing was placed on his head, Solomon tried everything to kill him. The way Saul tried to kill David, he tried everything. This guy could not be killed. And in one of the days, Solomon now said to him, truly, I know that it's now the God of Israel that gave you the kingdom. After Solomon had tried everything to kill him, he couldn't be killed. And he said, truly, I now know that it's God that gave you the kingdom. And so this guy became a king, the first king of a divided Israel. But after a while, so this guy was not even campaigning. It's not like your Peter. No, he wasn't campaigning. God just picked him from where he was and made him a king. Now, remember that then, Jerusalem was where they go to worship. And so this guy said, okay, you know what? Let me stop these people from going to Jerusalem to worship. Because if they go to Jerusalem to worship, maybe one of these days, they will now go to Jerusalem and see the beauty of Jerusalem, and they will now come back and say, I will no longer be their king again. Let us now become one country again with the Judah. Because Jerusalem was in Judah, in the other country. So he stopped his countrymen from going to the other country to worship. I started erecting Baal altar, false places of worship. And because of that, God was so angry with him. And because of God's anger with him and God's love, because God actually had 2 things for him, anger and love. It was God who gave you this kingdom, but because of the kingdom God gave you. Let me say this because there are pathways that are opening for me. Actually, you know God's gift can stop you from maximizing your potential. God's gift can stop people from maximizing their potential. Because this person, when he was nobody, if it is placed in his heart to demand for better, he'll say, well, let us demand for good governance. But now he has 2 branch offices where he makes 2 million, 3 million. If you tell me, say, what do you want me to do? You want government to come after my business? And there are people who tell me, Chima, you know you have to be careful. You are married, you have 2 children. I say, what? So the God that gave me a wife and 2 children is unwise. That I will now tell you, actually, you know that now that you have given me children, I'm now informing God that he gave me children. I will have to be careful so that nothing will happen. If you don't take time, God's gift will prison you. This man did not campaign to become a king. It was God that made him a king. And because he's now a king, in trying too much to protect his kingdom, he now went off and fell into idolatry. If this guy was not a king, perhaps he would have lived a good life and died a good man. But now he had been made a king. And in trying to protect something that he did not give himself, he found himself opposing the God that gave him the kingdom. And that's the bane of the middle class. The bane of the middle class is, hey, I have small feeding bottle. If I talk now, they will remove it from my mouth. That's the bane of the middle class. That's what I just read to you now. And then in this story, God was angry with this man, but God loved one of his children. And that particular one that God loved, God caused him to be sick, and God caused him to die. And while this child was sick, they have tried the best. You know, the king's child now, they went to the best medical schools. They got the best doctors, get the best everything. They have tried and everything. And the more they were trying, this man was getting sicker every day if there is something like that. And the king now said to the wife, well, when I was a young man, there is a prophet that told me that I will be a king. Go back to that prophet and tell him that my child is sick. And so the wife of the king disguised herself and went to the other city, that's Judah, another country. And this guy, nobody knew that she was wife, no chariots, no nothing. Just disguise herself like an ordinary woman, use hijab to cover herself. Meanwhile, before she got, the prophet is now old, can no longer see, is now blind. But immediately she came into the house of the prophet had known beforehand that she would come. The prophet now told her, I know who you are and I know why you are here. Now go back to your house. Immediately you enter the city, your child will die. Why will he die? For God has found something good in him. And out of all your family members, this is the only one that will die a peaceful death. The others will not be buried. That's what the prophet told him. So if you go to 1 Kings chapter 12, 13. Okay, now the prophet was still speaking to the woman. This is the child that was good, the one that God loves. He will die. And this is the only one that will be buried. The other one you will see. 1 Kings 14. Arise therefore, go to your own house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die. And all Israel shall mourn for him and bury him. For he is the only one of Jeroboam who shall come to the grave. Because in him there is found something good toward the Lord God of Israel in the house of Jeroboam. Moreover, the Lord will raise up for himself a king over Israel who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam. This is the day, what? Even now. For the Lord will strike Israel as a reed is shaking in the water. He will uproot Israel from this good land which he gave to their fathers and will scatter them beyond the river. Because they have made, now go to 1 Kings 15, 27 to 30. Then Baasha, the son of Ahijah of the house of Issachar, conspired against him. This him now is Jeroboam. And Baasha killed him at Gibeon, which belonged to the Philistines, while Nadab and all Israel laid siege to Gibeton. Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned his place. And it was so when he became king that he killed all the house of Jeroboam. He did not leave to Jeroboam anyone that breathed until he had destroyed him, according to the word of the Lord, which he had spoken by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite, because of the sins of Jeroboam, which he has sinned, and by which he had made Israel sin, because of his provocation with which he had provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger. Now, if you read this account from the Chronicles of somewhere else, these guys were not buried. Now, the guy that was sick, according to Nigeria, died untimely. But because he is the child of the president, he was given a state burial. The other ones that lived long life, none of them was buried. Their corpses were just laid on the streets. Not one of them. And so, if you now trace from biblical history, from the time this prophet gave this prophecy, so remember they told the woman, once you enter the city, the guy shall die. And the time this prophecy was fulfilled was in the 3rd year of Asa. Many years have passed. And many years have passed. And the other ones were living what you call long life. And they had what you call prosperity. But because God loved this one, God took him home when he would still be given a state burial. And God made him die peacefully. The other ones that lived long life, see how they ended. And so God can call a person home because he is pleased with the person. When we say that people die untimely, whose time are we talking about? Is it the Creator's time or is it our own time? And who determines the time? Who determined when you were born? Is it you? And who will determine when you will go? Is it you? And so your life that you did not create is the one you are trying to protect. And when we say, you can now say Delegiwa died untimely, didn't you see the people they killed in Ensas? If those people were killed in Ensas, would you have reasonably predicted how they would have died? Beyond that time and now, how many young people have died in Lagos in accidents under the bridge? How many people have been kidnapped? How many people have died in Plateau? Wouldn't they still have died nonetheless? And so when people say people die untimely, your timing is not right. It is the Creator that determines, that created you and created time. And so people look at Jesus and they think, oh, he died untimely. And people look at also his apostles. They will say all of them died untimely. But God's ways are higher than our ways. As the heavens are far from the earth, so is his thoughts. And so when people use, because of the fear to protect what God gave them, God gave you life, and He's now putting it on you to demand for better governance, because actually God is interested in an ordered society. Maybe one day we'll teach ordered society. God, man, and ordered society. You will see that God is interested in an ordered society. And so if you now choose to operate democracy, your God has given you functions that you must execute. But you say, God, because you gave me life, I'm not going to execute those functions. Oh no, God, because I have 2 million now. If I talk now, they will fire me from my job and I'll now become hungry, because you don't trust God. You don't trust that there is a God that can provide for you outside of your job. And because our Christians, contemporary Christians, they were not taught that suffering is part of the equation. The kind of Christianity we practice in Nigeria is the Christianity that God will give you a job, God will give you a mansion, God will give you 5 houses if you shout the loudest amen. And they are shouting the name of Jesus that was killed on the account of what He came to do. All His apostles that worked with Him were killed. The people that brought the gospel down were all killed. They all suffered one thing or the other on the account of their work with God. But you now, people tell you that you will not suffer. I won't demand for credible governance because I will not suffer. You see Christians who are in positions of authority, who can actually use their influence. You see a lot of influential people who can speak and governments will tremble. But they will not speak because they don't want confrontation. They want to protect their big churches. They want to protect their big estates, their big organizations. Viral individualism. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone.